everyone knows every lick, it seems, For me, maybe it's not as much about like, here's my lick that I do and nobody else has done, but it's just like how I stand and how I play and how I interact with other musicians, or maybe how I think about the rhythm, or how my phrasing is when I'm improvising.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Keith Billik, and thanks for joining me for another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. Hope you're all having a great day. I've actually had a couple good weekends in a row from a banjo playing standpoint recently. As I announced the last episode, I taught at a camp called the Great Lakes Music Camp a couple weekends ago, and I can't say enough good things about that. You should all check it out. It's at greatlakesmusic.org, and every year in early October, they put together a very talented list of instructors, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I was by far the least deserving of the cast there. So it's just great to be around all those talented people. And I know I have some listeners who were there. So if I met you at camp and you're listening, I'm sure you agree how good of a time it was. And it's right on Lake Michigan. It's great. So check that out if you have a chance. And then just this past weekend, I have a good friend and a talented songwriter named Rochelle Clark, who had me go into the studio with her, and we assembled a pretty good band and recorded a good handful of her songs, and it was sounding really good when I left, and looking forward to hearing the finished product. I'm sure I'll be posting about that when it's available on all sorts of social media. So if you'd like to hear about those things, track me down, follow me on social media, and that's how you can also find out about the podcast too. So on Facebook, I'm Picky Fingers. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that's picky_fingers. Or if you're on Twitter, follow me at Banjo Podcast. And like I said, I'll make any announcements about recordings I'm involved with, camps, teaching things, podcasty things, other random banjo things. That's where I am, so track me down. Any feedback or comments or suggestions, anything like that related to the show, or it doesn't have to be related to the show. Just ask me about anything. It's cool. Get a hold of me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. If you remember last episode, I asked for your suggestions of cool, recently released banjo music, and I did get some really good responses out of that. Still looking for more suggestions if anyone has them. Just a reminder, basically what I'm looking for is just cool recordings that have come out within like the last year or so that you think I should be aware of that has really excellent banjo playing on it. Feel free to email me those suggestions. Once again, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And I know I just threw a whole lot of information at you, but perhaps the most important website for me to tell you about is the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/banjopodcast. And basically the Patreon page is the way that if you are able to afford throwing me a few bucks a month to help offset the costs and my time in creating this podcast, that's how you do that. And I very much appreciate those of you who have done that. Today, I have to acknowledge a couple specific Patreon supporters. The first one is a gentleman named Anthony, and Anthony is actually a former student of B.B. Bowness's. So I love it when this happens, when I get a supporter email and he wrote me to specifically suggest that I have B.B. Bowness on a future episode. And so it makes me feel really cool when I can respond to him with like, well, actually, she's coming up in one of the next episodes. So as one of her former students, Anthony was really excited to be able to support this specific episode. So Anthony, thank you so much. And he also, I almost forgot. He also mentioned that he is expecting, or at the time that he emailed me, he was expecting twin boys due in October, which should be like any minute now. So Anthony, if you already have those new additions to your family, congratulations and buckle up, man. Twin boys. I can't even imagine. I have a couple kids, but they didn't show up at the same time. So they eased me in, slowly. So, wow, I can't even imagine. So good luck. Thank you for your support. And, hope you have time to listen in between, diaper changing and trying to get some sleep. The next supporter of the show, Bradley Green. I don't have too much information about Bradley Green, but Brad, if you're out there, I'm sure glad that you found the podcast, that you found it enjoyable, and that you chose to support it. So once again, for the rest of you, patreon.com/banjopodcast. Even a few bucks a month really helps keep these episodes coming out, which I enjoy making and hopefully you enjoy listening to. Today's episode features a phenomenal banjoist named Bowness. You'll hear all about her activities, but basically she's a part of a multiple IBMA Momentum Award-winning group called Mile 12, and they have probably quicker than almost any other band just risen through the ranks of the bluegrass world. They're really working hard, and they're all a very talented bunch of people. Every time I pay attention, BB's out jamming with Bela Fleck, or Mile 12 has some really cool gig, or she's teaching at more camps, or just otherwise making a really great name for herself, and she deserves all of it. She's a great player. The thing I admire most about her is that she is just fearless. She is absolutely committed to playing the song and the arrangements and doing what's best for the performance. But I think she really shines when you can get her in a situation where she's improvising more, and you'll really see her go for some challenging things. And it's always exciting just to see how a real master of the instrument takes themselves out on those limbs and manages to, more times than not, land on their feet. It definitely doesn't happen that way for me most of the time. So I just have to watch and be impressed and enjoy the conversation that I get to have. So here you go. Here is Bowness of Mile 12.
I'm from New Zealand. I grew up there on the North Island, and I found the banjo because a friend of my parents played banjo and guitar, and so we kind of just discovered him by accident. We were painting his house one day and saw a picture of him with a banjo, and I didn't know what instrument it was. I was like, what? There's not many banjo players in New Zealand, so...
Were you already into music before then?
I was, yeah. I was taking guitar lessons. I'd had, I don't know, a half dozen, so I knew how to do like a couple of chords. So I wasn't very invested in that yet. I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
But I really loved it. And so he took it out, hadn't been playing it too much, but he played us a tune, and I just like the sound of it. And he said something that kind of, I'm a very stubborn person apparently.
Okay.
So he said, the banjo is very hard, but we can start with guitar lessons if you want.
Okay.
And just that, like, I'm allowed to play the guitar, but the banjo is too hard, kind of made it, he just said the right thing, I guess, for
you
my
took that as
personality.
a personal challenge
Exactly.
of something to overcome.
Exactly. So,
right.
Yeah, the lessons started as guitar lessons with a little banjo at the end, and then after, like, 3 lessons, it was just all banjo.
So now that you're having some success, have you reached out to him and been like, here's to your guitar lessons, buddy?
Yeah. I wish. Actually, sadly, he passed away. But,
Okay.
Yeah. But it's great to go back home, and there's definitely a lot of people that I see, from when I was a kid, and they sort of remember me.
So was that guy, was he a New Zealander too? Or
Yeah.
was he like an American, or how, do you have any idea how he ended up with it? Just one of those random things?
Very random. He lived in a small town of like 5,000 people, so it's so unusual that he played the banjo, but he played because his dad was a luthier, so his dad made guitars and banjos, and his brother played as well. And actually, it turns out in the 1970s-ish era, there were a lot of banjo players in New Zealand.
I would have no idea about that.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. There was this one band that formed called the Hamilton County Bluegrass Band, and they were awesome. There's great YouTube documentaries of them still online, so definitely check them out.
I need to check that out.
It's so cool, but they just hit it off and started traveling around New Zealand, and they got on this TV show. I think it was called Country Roads or something, but it was a national TV show in New Zealand.
Pleasure, and we are so pleased that you're enjoying our new show, our chorale, our augmented, our bigger and brighter than ever Country Touch. I think we'll finish this show by, incidentally, the requests can be for songs that have been used on the show. For instance, this one. This is a repeat of a great old number, I Saw the Light. And to play it for us, to finish up the show, see you next week, Hamilton County Bluegrass Band, folks.
heart filled with sin, I wouldn't let my dear Savior in. Then Jesus came like a stranger in the night. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more darkness, no more night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Take it out. Just like a blind man, I wandered alone, sorrows and fears.
So lots of people knew what bluegrass was. My grandmother's generation all knew it, but my generation has no idea. Or they do a little bit for various reasons now, but...
Would that be similar to like the Beverly Hillbillies here phenomenon where a whole generation of Americans were exposed that way through the
I think so.
show?
Yeah, and then also like Our Brother We're Out There did the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
and Deliverance.
Yeah.
Every generation has its pop culture touchstone for
Bluegrass.
entering into the banjo.
Yeah, it's strange, yeah.
So after you found that, how did you actually get access to one? Are they difficult to find over there, or how did you actually begin learning?
Well, I took lessons from him. Now, he wasn't a teacher at that point. I was his only student as far as I know, but I took weekly lessons from him. I think he charged me like $10 or something amazing like that, and we'd sit down and play banjo, and it was incredible because he was kind of like a lone musician, a lone bluegrass musician in the middle of New Zealand. And he had discovered Bela Fleck and Tony Trischka and, all these, Tony Rice and all these people back, in the 90s when they were touring over here, but he was in New Zealand. So he had all these, or a few tab books and things of like Drive and other stuff. So, eventually I kind of started heading that way, and he was listening to bluegrass and more into fiddle tunes and melodic, and so he just kind of taught me that sort of stuff. And the first banjo I owned was one of his that his dad built that he sold to me for 500 New Zealand dollars.
And what does that translate to? Or what does that
like
convert
300 and something, you
okay,
know. Yeah.
So relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, it wasn't a good banjo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who were the players that you liked? You said that he found Bela and Tony. Were you kind of just exposed to whatever he was playing for you?
Yeah,
Are those the players you were into?
Yeah, we this was like a little bit before YouTube was really possible. Like dial-up internet existed, but it would take so long to load a video.
A video is just right.
Yeah. But luckily, some other people moved to this small town in New Zealand. The town is called Martin, and they were a family of fiddlers, and they also had some, just by chance, he was into old-time and bluegrass music, and so he had Drive, I think, and he had he had Deliverance by the soundtrack for Deliverance, and he had like 4 or 5 CDs that we, his sons and myself all hung out and listened to as teenagers.
Were they playing too? Did you have anyone to play with?
Yeah, I did. And that's probably the reason I keep going was especially one of their sons, George Jackson. He now lives in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's still playing fiddle. But he and I grew up for a couple of years there just practicing together and jamming and learning how to improvise. And he was already pretty good at violin because his parents played, but he was in love with the banjo, so we kind of hung out and learned banjo together.
Played the hillbilly music, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you said you hung out and improvised. Was that something that you tried to learn pretty early on? That's usually like a really scary mountaintop that people try to get over, but that was something that you had an early awareness about?
I guess because of this friend of mine and his dad, improvised. So there was a little bit of help there and kind of a scene. But I say improvised, we tried to. I don't think we really were, probably. It's hard to remember, but but we were just really, we were just having a good time. We just were pretty driven. You know, we were both homeschooled, and our families actually traveled around in these homemade trucks and buses and things called the Gypsy Fair. So it was this whole traveling. There was about 50 families that all traveled around together.
What?
But, yeah, so it was kind of bizarre, but because we were homeschooled, we had, we'd make this little schedule for ourselves. We'd get up and go for a jog together, and then we'd do our homework separately together, and then we'd have the afternoon to just hang out and play banjo.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so it was really fun.
So there's does that still happen?
It
These
does,
hippie Is it hippie-ish?
Yeah,
is
it is kind of hippie. Yeah, my
Okay.
family, my parents weren't really hippie types. They actually owned a fish and chip shop, classic New Zealand profession, for 17 years, but they
They
decided...
use the newspaper?
Yeah,
They serve it?
newspaper. Yeah,
Okay.
I would actually wrap them when I was like 10.
All right.
So I got good at rapping. But yeah, they did that for long enough to know that they didn't want to do that for any longer.
Yeah.
It's a very hard job.
Yeah.
So they decided, you know what, life's short. We'll build a truck and we'll travel around the country and we'll put the kids in homeschool. And yeah, it was fun. It was a pretty unique way to grow up, you know.
At what point do you think you started developing your own style on the instruments? Was there any light bulb moment that you had or things that you would try to do where you, I don't know, that you tried to kind of carve your own way? Do you remember anything like that?
I feel like that's only just starting to happen for me now, and
Really?
only in like subtle ways, but maybe it's just harder to notice like your own kind of style things. It's easier to maybe see that in other people. But
Well, then let's talk about now. Like, what do you think that you're doing now, or what types of things do you work on in your own playing that you think are unique or have allowed you to express your ideas a little better?
it's a good question. It's
Yeah,
really hard to,
it's a
it's
tough
like
one.
sometimes you don't really think about that stuff. But I think sometimes a person's style is almost just like their touch on the instrument, you know, just how they hit the strings or how they, you know, I don't know exactly. But it's hard with bluegrass too because there is just so much common vocabulary. Like everyone knows every lick, it seems, you know. So it's not, for me, maybe it's not as much about like, here's my lick that I do and nobody
Yeah.
else has done, but it's just like how I stand and how I play and how I interact with other musicians, or maybe how I think about the rhythm, or, you know, improvise, how my phrasing is when I'm improvising.
Which
might be
might not have
different.
been anything that you ever actually worked on. It might
No.
just be what happens. And
Exactly.
You have your sense of timing and
Yeah.
things that happen.
And I think maybe historically I tend to, I think a lot of players, this is something I'm trying to actually work out of, but it's a lot of players are very busy and play lots of notes and have this consecutive eighth note thing going on. I think
Yeah.
historically I'm totally fine with space. I just stop, you know.
Yeah.
But I understand that there's this drive that happens with the consecutive eighth notes that is so much a part of bluegrass.
It feels wrong when you've trained yourself so much to play these rolls and get everything evenly and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It just feels wrong when
To stop.
when that doesn't happen all the time.
Right. Yeah, I
So
think
that's a
it's-
good point.
So when I got to be, 18, and I was figuring out, well, do I get a job? Do I move to America? What do I do? I decided to go to school for music, and
Mm-hmm.
I studied at the New Zealand School of Music, and I majored in jazz because the only two options really were jazz or classical, and
Yeah.
I couldn't really imagine trying to do classical on the banjo.
Yeah.
But jazz and bluegrass, there's some similarities, like mainly improvising.
Yeah.
So I think the space thing and the phrasing thing has somewhat come from
Oh,
that,
yeah,
even though
big time.
yeah, I can't really. If you were to like, let's jam on a jazz tune, I'd be like, whoa, hold on now. But some of that has probably infiltrated my psyche.
How did they teach you on banjo? I imagine there was probably not a professor.
For banjo,
Yeah.
jazz. No,
I mean,
there wasn't.
is
There's
that
probably
too
not
much of
even
a hunch,
here,
or-
is there? Well, there is. I guess at Berkeley, like
At
there's some
Berkeley they
stuff.
do, but even that is only in relatively recent history.
Yeah.
Been the case.
And
yeah.
usually it's bluegrass too. Like I know, and I don't think they're like, this is the jazz banjo program or the classical banjo. It's just like, here's the string, here's the roots department, I think.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, yeah, I think that's what they call it, the acoustic roots music.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should probably look it up before I start saying things that aren't
On the
true,
podcast,
but-
people are going to be writing to you.
Oh, yeah, I'll get the hate mail, those Berkeley death threats.
Yeah. So, but it was a great experience because I was not even in any way possible playing bluegrass because there wasn't too many people to play with. So for 3 years, 2 of them I was just in New Zealand hanging out with saxophone players and piano players and people
Yeah.
my own age, jamming on jazz, and it was like thrown in the deep end, But it was really cool.
So how did your technique have to adapt to that?
Yeah, well, mostly single string.
Yeah.
I know like people like Pat Cloud and stuff have gotten great at doing melodic jazz. That I could never figure that out because I think one of the main things with jazz is you want to be able to what's it called? swing. You want to swing the notes, right? So some of them are shorter than others, and some of them are longer. And you can control the note length if it's a closed single string thing, but it's harder to do that melodic.
Yeah, you can't stop the note quite as effectively.
Also, it doesn't make any sense to me, melodic style. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it gets pretty overwhelming and daunting.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah, to try and improvise in too. Like I feel like for throwing in a phrase or two or like a little cascading run or something is one thing, but to really be note for note improvising
in E flat,
melodic, it blows my mind that people can do that.
Yeah, it's otherworldly for
Yeah.
sure. So one of the first ways that I was aware of your playing was that video that you made of the Tony Rice solo that you played. I think that made the rounds a bit. What's your process for? I guess for one thing, why did you even want to do something like that? I don't know that it occurs to most players to transcribe a Tony Rice solo on the banjo. But then, how do you tackle something like that?
Yeah, I was getting ready for a banjo camp North, and I was trying to think of creative classes, because it seems like a lot of people have done you think of a class and it's like, oh, it's already been taught by great people, sure. Tony Trishka, Alan Monday, it's like, well, what can I think of that's like a little different? And it was a friend of mine that mentioned, oh, Tony Rice on the banjo could be cool. And it just sort of like idea stuck with me for a while.
Yeah.
I think it was another year or so before I was like, all right, well, let's just try this and see if it's even possible. It's really hard. There's octave changes all over the place. And some of it isn't even really like my cup of tea. It's very bluesy and very full on. I love his playing. But I wouldn't naturally like improvise those types of ideas, I guess. But as a technical challenge, it was so good. And every time I relearn it now, I've taught it at a couple of different camps, it's like... I'm still just like, this is really hard. Like, it takes me a few days to get it up to speed again.
Yeah, so, it's tough when you'd have to practice it every day to be able to just call on it.
Right. I don't really pull it out in the jam sessions too much.
How did you learn that? Do you have like a slow down type of software? Is that how you approach those things? Yeah,
Audacity is the one I use.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. Yeah, it's good for that.
Is that how you learn most things that you
transcribe? Yeah, and I was on a kick transcribing mandolin for a while a few years ago, and that was really cool. I think the thing I've realized in the last year or the last few months or whatever is that like I've transcribed a lot over the years, and it's always really helpful, but if it doesn't feel good, part of what I've transcribed, I don't really force it, because if I'm not gonna like naturally improvise it, then I've got to, I think I'm very stubborn, like I said, and I try and force things to fit on the banjo, but sometimes it's just, I got to find my own thing that's like more comfortable and
you have to know
accessible.
When to give up sometimes.
Kind of, yeah, and it's hard because it's like you want to be able to do that thing note for note that the fiddle player just did, or, and in my band, I always try and like, all right, David plays something really cool, I've got to learn it.
Right.
But it's like, well, David can't roll, in the same way, so you got to kind of work to the instrument a little bit.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Another thing that I really liked on the new album is, and this is, I'm not remembering the title. What's the waltz time song?
There's a fast one, Barefoot in Jail.
It's relatively quick. It's
silly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I left at the bar and head to the toll lot to pick up the car. Take out some money to pay down the bill. Bring me my boots 'cause I'm barefoot in jail.
You had some really cool stuff that you do on there. I really like it. And
thanks.
I was wondering, It occurred to me after I heard that, like, I never actually work on playing in 3. And I think it's probably, I don't know, maybe it's just me, that it never occurs to me to sit and work on actually playing in 3. Is that what do you do? Is that something that you just have to make time for?
Yeah, that's a tough one. We have a couple power waltzes in our set. Usually another one, Jack of Diamonds, that we've been playing for a while, and that's always good too. I think if I don't practice improvising on them, then I get really stuck. I get really tied up. So I just sit there, with a metronome and practice some things. And working out solos is really great for a starting place, like I'll work up a solo and I might not play that exact solo on the stage or whatever, but I know I can, so and over
you have
time,
a fallback.
And that's the thing with playing gigs every night is like you're soon gonna, even if you make up a great solo, you're gonna get sick of it so quickly because you played it last night and all the guys that are on the stage heard it last night.
They've heard it.
Yeah, so it's like it's a hard balance. I think that's the thing. I'm sure once you've been doing it for 50 years, performing, you really know where your line is and where your comfort level is and how to push it. And I'm sure I'm still like, I think I can do it tonight, but then I fall off the wagon, so to speak.
Is it more about like not being able to do it, or is it more like on a certain night you're just not very inspired for some reason? And that's when you're like, all right, I know I can play this one.
Yeah.
Might as well just do the thing that I know what to do.
Yeah. And certain songs lend themselves a bit more. So a lot of our stuff is very highly arranged, within the song there's stops or there's little dynamic things or whatever. And so sometimes the song is just calling for the same thing. It's almost like I think of the solo as less of a solo and more of a part. Because, either it's really short
like
or it's just...
music.
Or it's just really weird. And, overall, I want the music to sound really good, So there's a hard balance with, certain songs is a freedom and it's a bit more in the bluegrassy vein. And, of course, you're going to improvise stuff. And some nights it's going to be really good and some nights it's going to be really bad. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter, but... I'm
sure it depends on the venue and the audience as well.
How the sound check went,
Yeah,
totally. All those things.
Let's talk about your actual instrument. You were mentioning before we started about your armrest, and I'll let you, now that we've talked about repeating yourself on stage, I'll let you repeat yourself and say what you told me about that and go through your instrument and tell us what you have and what you like about it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm really bad with this side of things. I was wondering if this would come up, but this is a 5-string banjo.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. It was made by Robin Smith. I bought it from a guy off eBay. So I didn't play it before I bought it. And I bought it maybe 13, 14 years ago, something like that. Because I needed a better banjo and I was in New Zealand and there aren't really banjos there that are above the
So this was the
range.
Direct upgrade from your teacher's dad. That banjo. This was what you got right after that.
This was there was one in between that lasted about a year. That was a 1970 Ibanez banjo that actually is still going around. Another young banjo player that lives in New Zealand is now playing that one. So it's kind of cool. It's getting the handoff. But yeah, this was the next banjo. So this is my third banjo I've ever had. And I've just played it in so much, that there are things I love about it. I love that it can do scrugs and it can also do single string stuff. And I've definitely played other banjos that sound better on fireball male down the neck, but they don't do the forkadere up the neck. They won't do like everything that I like to do on a show. So this is kind of the in between. Also, it's just it's a $3,000 banjo or something. So if it does get broken, it's not the end of the world.
It's not the price of a house or something like that. Yeah.
So that's important for me touring around so much. But
is that a maple? I can't see the back of it or anything. Is it a maple
mahogany.
Banjo? Okay, yeah.
I know that.
You've been told that it's mahogany?
I've been told it's mahogany. Well, this isn't really to do with the banjo, but the other day, the last gig our band played, my 5th string peg fell out. And it
popped
was
completely out of the neck?
Completely out of the neck.
While
and
you were playing?
We'd just finished song 3. I was tuning up for song number 4 of a 2-set gig.
Oh, no.
It wouldn't go back in. Usually these things go back in. You just stick back in and put the string on and the string tension holds it there. It wasn't. I don't know if there's a humidity or just the hole had, I guess, gotten too big. So
what did you do?
So I played the gig with 4 strings. And
Are you serious?
yeah, the whole gig. And we even did banjo fiddle. Like we break down and do one tune that's just banjo fiddle. And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. It'll be fine.
Wow.
And it sounded a little bit strange, but you'd be surprised as to how with the band playing as well, and you can still hear the first string kind of popping with the rolls. And I was ghosting. Obviously, I was just playing like I normally play, but there was just no.
You'd be
fifth
screwed
string.
up if you just didn't move your thumb. For
Yeah.
a while. Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
It was fine. Yeah. But
You're a hero. That's incredible.
It was also kind of a low pressure gig in some ways. So it would have been different if it was the Ryman Auditorium, perhaps.
Yeah. Hopefully, there you would have been able to find another banjo from someone in the neighborhood to rush over to you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So what's the armrest? I threatened to make you talk about it again.
Yeah, the armrest is made by a guy named Ed, and I forget his last name, but he came up to us at a bluegrass festival in Florida and had it ready made for me. A very kind gentleman, and contacted me through Facebook and said, hey, I make these great armrests, and they're way more comfortable than the metal ones. And I was like, yeah, well, that makes sense, you know?
And it's not I don't think you said what it is made out of. It's a wooden armrest.
Yeah, it is mahogany, so you matched it to my banjo.
Oh, yeah, very cool.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. So, yeah, that's awesome, and I don't know what this tail piece is, but this bridge is great. This is a scorpion bridge. A lot of people using,
Yeah.
So they're fantastic. He very kindly shipped me a few months back. So.
Silvio,
yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Is that a radiused fingerboard?
It is. It's like the least amount you can, So it's just a little bit. But I noticed that I've recently bought another banjo, TB1, and it's not radiused. Fun. It's cool. It's really cool. And again, it sounds great, five-ball mail and stuff. So this is nice. But it's not radius, so it's very hard to get to do the transition there.
Do you feel like the TB1 does not have what you said about this one, the versatility?
I think to a degree, but I think also that it's just I'm really finding it hard to not play this one. I'm so steeped in it, and I don't know, when you play as a teenager for 5-6 hours a day for years and years and years on the exact same instrument, I find it really hard to not play this banjo.
You bond with it, yeah.
Yeah, as I know the response, I know kind of exactly how it works,
Yeah, if it's working for you, then don't.
Yeah,
don't mess with
there are
it,
issues, but all banjos I think have little issues. And
yeah, it's not like the fifth string pops out on it or anything.
No, yeah, it's good.
Never, that would never happen. So you fixed it though.
Yeah, so
did you have to drop some glue in there or something?
No, so this guy I use he's in Massachusetts, Dave Dick. He's a fantastic luthier, works on a lot of guitars, but banjos as well. And he basically made a mahogany plug that like inserted in there, so then there was no hole, and then he sounded like it was a bit of a pain.
Oh man!
But it seems good now. I just got it back a few days ago, so
that's why we leave those things to the professionals.
Yeah.
And don't try to do them ourselves.
Yeah, really.
Home. Don't do this at home, kids.
Yeah.
What about like picks or microphones or anything like that? Do you have preferences about that?
I do. So you probably know a friend of mine, Gabe Hirschfeld. Probably.
I've not met him in person, but I would love to. He's funny on the internet. I think I've said before, he's my favorite terrible bluegrass Photoshop artist or something like that. Have you seen his photo mashups?
I have seen some of them, yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
Raphael Stanley is a personal favorite of mine. He's wearing the Ninja Turtle bandana.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So he's kind of like my Boston banjo tech buddy. He he helps me out. Maybe not with the fifth string popping out, but other little things that go wrong with this banjo. He's there, and he always used these picks. These are Oval 8 National picks, the old ones.
Yeah.
They're kind of hard to find, and I always just thought that's a load of garbage. Like. Your picks don't matter that much. I've got these great, I was using Hofmeier's or, even cheaper than that, and it never bothered me up until about 2 years ago at Joe Val Bluegrass Festival.
Yeah.
This guy who collects these and kind of re-scrubs them and makes them better, refurbishes them, if you will,
Sure.
Gave me a set. And so they're like $120 or $100. They're pretty expensive to buy, but he just gave them to me. And now I'm addicted, So it's like one of those things. Somebody gave me cocaine for the first time, and now I can't not have these picks. So, yeah, I use these, and I love them. They just give you a bit more clarity and volume and something, It's subtle, but it makes a difference.
I hate hearing stuff like that because the more people who tell me that, now it just means that I probably have to, I don't know, start saving up my pick money.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
The Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast is brought to you by our official sponsor, Deering Banjos. Since 1975, Deering has firmly established themselves as the banjo specialists, creating some of the best 5-string banjos available today. Artists who use Deering banjos include 5-string legends such as Jens Kruger, Alison Brown, Ryan Kavanaugh, Terry Baucom, Eddie Adcock, Rhiannon Giddens, Mark Johnson, Tony Trischka, and many others. After being in business for over 40 years, Deering has always focused on 2 things: the quality of their product and their renowned customer service. Whether you have been playing all your life or just starting out on banjo, Deering offers a huge array of options at every price point, as well as truly personal customer service. Even if you don't play a Deering banjo currently, their website is still stacked with great useful information on banjo maintenance, playing tips, events, news, and more. So check out their site at deeringbanjos.com or give them a call on their toll-free number at 800-845-7791 to discover the perfect Deering banjo for you. And of course, tell them that the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast sent you. What about the thumb pick? Is that
thumb pick's blue chip?
Blue chip, yep.
Like it. I just,
Yeah, cool.
I go through phases where I'm not very exploring in these types of in trying other banjos, trying other picks, trying other string gauges. I just kind of have what I have,
It sounds like, at least for armrests and finger picks, it takes someone literally
To give
coming
it
to
to
you
me.
and saying, "Here, I'm giving this to you,
Yeah.
and try it out."
Yeah, that's exactly.
But
yeah.
you're sold. That's cool.
Yeah.
Why don't you demo them for us? Can we hear
Yeah,
a little
sure.
bit of
I
something?
know. Yeah, well, you said do as much demo as you
Yeah,
want.
play a lot.
Yeah. Every time I tune my 5th string now, I'm thinking, it's gonna fall out.
You're scarred.
And it is actually slipping, but I think it's just the string. This might be a edit chunk for you.
I'm nervous for you.
I know. I'm like, is my eye gonna get?
I'm
poked
glad
out
you're
here?
wearing glasses. Yeah.
Is that squinty
I know.
face? Okay, well this is more in tune.
Is your shirt a rabbit with a saddle on it? What on earth is your shirt?
It's the Punch Brothers. This is an old, the old
old
design.
Punch Brothers
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Interesting. I've not
it's
seen
cool.
that one before.
yeah, I think it's a collector's item now. Apparently, I kind
So-
of in tune today.
So
yeah.
BB's wearing a collector's item t-shirt, which means if you're out there and you have t-shirts to give to her so that she can start having new t-shirts, she really needs them.
Yeah.
So show up to her shows and give her t-shirts.
I'm same way
Please.
with clothes shopping. I don't go clothes shopping, and people just get things to me.
How do I get this arrangement going?
You gotta, if you're in a band where somebody else cares about how the band looks and is willing to
That's the
outfit
thing.
the band, then you
Okay.
just hands off. That's great. Our guitarist's fiance, Caitlin, is she's just really good at that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
she takes us all out and is like, this color for you, don't knot these pants, don't ever do that. you
Yeah.
know?
I actually was in a band like that. Do you know Lindsay Lou?
Oh, yeah. You were in
Nashville?
that band?
Yeah,
Nice.
when they lived in Michigan here.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit like that. I don't know how many times she had to tie my ties for me before a show, or
Yeah.
someone had to bring me a shirt because I didn't have any nice shirts or anything
Yeah,
like
hip.
that. But-
You gotta look hip these days, is the thing.
and that's obviously not my strong point. So
I don't know. You
I
got
bet-
the good outfit going on here.
I have the perfect outfit for a podcast.
Yes, yeah.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Cool.
You got a radio voice, or what's yeah.
You survive. Yeah, a good face for radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know this is scary, isn't it?
You've
It's
survived
like,
the great retuning of 2019.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's see what I can play. Very unhappy fifth string right now.
Yeah, it's fighting you.
Yeah. I think
So
I just
when
strung it up wrong.
Well, when it popped out of the bridge earlier, did that move your bridge? Because sometimes
Oh,
that
it
can
might
happen.
have, yeah.
Like, is it not centered anymore?
it's okay. I think it's just because
It's just being fussy.
Yeah, I didn't put it through. I don't know how people restring here, but like usually you can go twice through. Yeah, and I'm like I change my strings kind of a lot, so I just like to go once through, so then it's easier to take them off.
When you undo
and then
it,
they slip a lot, you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, banjo.
What have you been working on lately? Is there any particular techniques that you've discovered that are extra cool?
You know what? One thing I've been loving is doing this. Just scale up. And, when I get warmed up, I can go a little faster, but doing that, just up the 4-note arpeggio up and down is such a great warm up, such a great thing to like work through.
So you're doing the 4 notes up and down, and then going through like the diatonic chords.
Yeah,
is that what you're doing there?
Yeah, like G, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D7, E minor 7, F sharp half diminished. And going up the neck, and in G. But so then the next thing that I've been doing, I don't know if you've done this before, but it's so hard, but like really fun, is doing double notes. So
yeah,
and it's hard, it's like hard to line it all up. But I'll try and do that a little bit too.
When you do single string, are you strictly a thumb index person?
I am.
Okay.
I know there's 2 schools.
Yeah.
Are you a 3?
I'm whatever I think I can get away with. I was thumb index mostly, and then I did one of these episodes with Chris Pandolfi, and
cool.
he's very cerebral with these things, and he really thinks through his ergonomics.
Yeah,
and he's sold on mixing in the third finger for a lot of that single string. So. There are definitely some situations where that seems to be a better fit, and it's tough to explain which situations that is, but it just feels better sometimes. And I don't know if you have this difficulty. Me with single string, it's tough for one thing to be fast enough, but for also it not to sound very choppy.
Yeah.
So
that's so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So the thing that you were just demonstrating.
Yeah.
Do you have ways that you've already integrated that into your improvising or your playing?
Yeah, it's harder to kind of find homes for it, but like so maybe on a tune like Temperance Reel even, just maybe not doing every chord scale because it wouldn't sound very musical, but something like just trying to like think about those shapes, especially the ones that have like the color, adding the 9 on top of that can be nice, and just a different way to think about it. Or even on the G, instead of thinking just G arpeggio, thinking like B minor, because that's really like G9, G major 9, so things like that. And it's like a nice thing to just try and see different shapes. Because I find, I don't know about you, but I find that like I get stuck in working in small, steps. So like stepwise kind of improvising. Like I can do this all day.
Oh, yeah,
But
I see.
I would never like improvise necessarily like a longer,
across the
bigger jumps, and I guess that's kind of a natural tendency with the banjos because like your range is so small
and
that you're gonna kind of
clustered
work
together.
Yeah, you're gonna go up a tone or 2 tones, at a time. You're gonna work in these small little areas, but it gets a little bit like just finding ways to kind of stretch out the options that you would reach for.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it's a very good right hand exercise too. It really gets
right, because this one especially
a feel
like
for the strings.
That one is so hard, like going across single string and then just keep going. Like, can you go across all 4 strings really fast? It's so hard. now I'm like warmed up a little bit more. I can do it a little bit faster, but you put the click on and it's so hard. And another thing I've been trying to do is offbeat doubles. Actually, my husband came up with this one. He's a guitarist, so he's thinking differently than a banjo player would, but a lot of people do it. But yeah, just doing like, so if you imagine the downbeat, I should count 3, 4, 1. And that's a really nice thing if you can work it into your improvising on a tune, and just doing like, it's really hard to get in and out of, but I feel like that's really good for technique. For me personally, I find it so hard, so I think it must be good for me, Yeah,
exactly. You're forging new neural pathways or
whatever
something.
Doesn't want to happen is the thing I should be doing, probably.
Right. At least if you're stubborn.
Right.
Like you. No,
like most musicians, I think there's got to be like the itch,
Yeah, once you get to a certain level where you are, the times where you can feel yourself accomplishing more is harder to come by than when you're starting and everything's new and everything you do is like such an achievement. Yeah. It's nice to be able to still conquer things from time to time.
It can be hard to, because there is so much you could practice, when you get to a certain level, it's like, wow, I could work in the key of E, I could work on single string, I could work really fast, I could work really slow, I could write a tune, I could, there's just endless amounts of things you can do. So it can be overwhelming to like, let's just play a fiddle tune and practice it and be excited about that one thing that you're working on. I think in the last year or so I've gotten maybe it's because I'm getting older, it's like I'm getting better at being less crazy when I'm practicing and being like, I must do all these things, to just being like, I'm just going to play for 15 minutes and have a good time.
Well, I'm older than you and I still haven't figured it out. I'll just start doing something and like, no, I suck at that. I'm going to do this other thing. No, I suck at that too. And it's hard. It's hard to be focused. And so that's cool. I know this is kind of a can of worms, but who do you consider your main influences now?
For banjo?
I guess or not banjo. Like what type of music do you really like, or do you feel like you maybe even emulate a little bit?
Yeah. It's funny, like people were like, what are you listening to lately or whatever? And I honestly just, I listen to Radio New Zealand, music is, I do listen to a lot of music, but it's less, it feels more like a chore a little bit. But for when I'm sitting down to practice with people that I would love to sound like, Baylor is huge, sure. Gnome is huge, Alison Brown, J.D. Crowe for the more trad stuff, for banjo. But in the last maybe 5 or so years, I've been transcribing other instruments like Tony Rice a little bit, but getting super into mandolin, transcribing mandolin stuff. So Dominic Leslie is one of my favorite young mandolin players, and just really tasteful. And I like, you might transcribe, a 2-bar phrase or something that he plays, and like, part of like 6 notes work well, because maybe the range isn't so good or the shift isn't comfortable, but taking those 6 notes and just like really making something out of it. Was it like, this isn't actually his,
I'd love to hear some of this.
That was a phrase that actually, it's going to sound like kind of creepy, like I'm stalking all these young mandolin players. The guy that plays with Brian Sutton, I'm forgetting his name, Casey Campbell.
Oh, all right.
That's his name, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so he, it's just like from a YouTube thing, just like. So it's in the key of G, but on the C chord. So you're starting off just kind of like temperance drill, building low ground. Then doing that. They got the F sharp in there, which is super cool. And then the B flat, it's like it's Lydian dominant, It's like it's so hip. Really I would never think to do that. And I probably wouldn't hear another banjo player doing that. Maybe Baylor.
That's the cool thing about it, is that if you bring those 6 notes or whatever it is to the banjo, it's kind of yours then. You've successfully stolen it.
Yeah. And that's everyone's doing that anyway.
Of course. Of course.
So, yeah.
What are the recordings that you're proudest of your own playing on?
Oh, good question. Well, the most recent album, I'm pretty happy with how that sounds.
Yeah, it's so good.
But we, as a young band, I think we age out of it.
And actually, like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think you've actually said, like, what your band is and the most recent record. Like, we might as well specify that. Yeah, exactly.
So the band name is Mile 12, and the album is City on a Hill. So we recorded it pretty recently. I'm bad with remembering what times of years, but it was probably 5 months ago or something in Nashville with Brian Sutton producing, and that was an incredible experience. We recorded 10 songs. 8 of them were the band originals, and 2 of them were covers. And yeah, it's a kind of varied. There's some that are a bit more like progressive sounding. There's a really fast trad song. There's some like that waltz that's kind of fun.
There's that waltz that's really cool.
Yeah,
there's one of David's tunes that is a bit more progressive and a little spooky sounding, and I'm the worst with titles. I'm so terrible.
That's right. I can barely remember that. It's called Rialto, that one. That's a neat tune.
Curious about these kind of things. Did Brian, when he's producing, what kind of feedback does he give you personally, if anything?
Very low key.
Okay.
I think more. He was so good at dealing with all 5 of us as an entity, because we're nervous and we're young and we're excited, and being
and he's been there 50,000 times.
Right. It's only our second ever album, second time in the studio as a band, and so he, just like the fact that he trusted us and was just like so laid back, and it was just so fun, was exactly what we needed as like a very neurotic young. We're all type A, like organized and over the top. So that was like the perfect. Hey, this guy knows what he's doing, and he thinks it sounds good. Cool.
I wonder if he intentionally changed. I wonder if he could have been different, but maybe he sensed that was what you needed. I don't know. It'd just be speculation, I guess.
I'm sure. I mean, that's like the main thing in a producer that you want, right? Is like somebody who's really good at dealing. It's mostly just you're trying to
bring out the best of you.
And
for sure.
And feel out personalities and how you all mesh together and who's ticking off who.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
he was great at that.
And then so when I interrupted you about what you're talking about the playing that you're most proud of, and you said like the most recent Mile 12 is of course great, but I don't know if you were going anywhere else with that.
Well, I was just going to say is that we, as such a young band, and now that we've played that stuff live for even just a couple months, we listen back to it and we're like, oh, it's better now.
Yeah.
So, it's you can never win, you can never catch up, but it's constantly trying to. YouTube is the worst because you put something up 6 months later, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it's embarrassing. But I guess just whatever is the most recent thing.
But that means you've improved, right?
I hope so.
It would suck to look back and be like, oh, I can't do that anymore.
Right.
That would be a worse feeling, probably.
I do that sometimes with, I used to voice memo all my practice sessions in school while I was studying jazz. I'd listen to some of those, whoa, that's a really cool chord melody that I have no idea, I've forgotten completely how to do.
You couldn't even start to do it.
But
that's incredible.
There's things that I often sometimes I wonder, like, was I better at that then or something? But I think there's just something that happens to a musician with all the years of practicing different things that, no matter how hard you practice it as a young musician, the person who's been doing it 40 years longer is just going to be better. There's just more experience. Their ears are better. They're better at listening. They're better at being people in the world. It's like you just kind of get more experience. So.
Yeah, they've figured the things out about you don't have to play 16th note machine gun style banjo, and it's okay to let it breathe. And they've figured out all the things that you and certainly me are still trying to discover. So
yeah, and there's no
cool.
shortcut. I don't think. It's just you have to just do it lots,
work.
and like figure it out on your own.
Dang it! So just buying some Oval 8 finger picks that's not gonna magically transform me.
Well, maybe.
I could try it.
Yeah.
Someone give me a pair.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other tips? I don't know. I think we know everything we need to know now.
Yeah, so much chatting, but yeah, I don't know. I think that stuff that I've been most into is just the kind of single string, like, figuring out.
Yeah.
And one thing I've realized definitely, and this may sound really obvious, people are going to be like, well, of course, but practicing improvising, like working on a fill tune, I just didn't do that enough, and I still don't do it enough. Just actually putting the metronome on 85 and just slowly figuring out what would I improvise if I was in a jam, stopping if you like something, work it through, so yeah, I feel like that's like the thing I'm most into right now is actually practicing it.
It's a super tough question, but how do you practice improvising? I mean, I know you just said that play until you find something that you think is cool and then maybe focus on that, but like even before you do that, are you just go for it? And
yeah, I think
it's such a tough thing to describe. I don't know how I would describe it either. But.
Recently I got to go to the Billik camp that happened. Yeah, and that was so cool because just getting to meet him and stuff. I haven't met him, and he's been like the hero of mine forever.
Of course,
but he said something really interesting in one of the conversations I had with him. He's just like, well, he actually, it was on the phone. He was calling me to ask if I wanted to come, and I think he was trying to like get a sense of, I don't know, who I am and stuff. Yeah. So he was asking me all these questions like, how do you do your single string? And I'm on the phone with Baylor being like, well, Mr. Baylor, I do it like this. And then after a while he was like, oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter as long as you can play the idea that's in your head, right? And that just, for some reason, that comment really stuck to me. It's like, I guess it doesn't matter. It's like whatever's in your head on that Tuesday morning at 11 when you have the instrument in your hand. So I just kind of try and like improvise. I think of something, I try it, and that's the perfect place to try it is when you're going slow and when you can stop and fix it if you want to. But yeah, also just playing,
Yeah, but I think that's actually a really important thing to point out because are you saying that when you improvise, you're usually trying to play something that already exists in your head and you're trying to play something that you are in some sense already hearing?
Yeah, I guess so. Or it might be that, I'm playing sort of the melody or whatever, and then I hear just a little like rhythmic idea, or I hear, or I play something and I like that. Can I take it somewhere? Right. And so it's not like every single thing I'm like hearing in my head. I know some musicians are like that, but I
mean, it could even just be a split second of, I guess the difference, what I mean is, especially as banjo players, it's so right-hand pattern-oriented that it's probably easy to like disengage your brain and just let your fingers do weird rolls with your chord shapes and like hope for the best.
Right.
But you're saying that you think a good improviser, like that exists in your head before you even try to get to where your hands are doing it. Is that what you do?
So, well, I guess just my thought is that I would just naturally, I'm just going to play just by accident, just because I'm me and you're you. I'm going to play different things. I'm going to come across different things. And my tastes are me, so what I think is cool is going to be from when you're practicing and you stumble across something you might think is really cool. Maybe I don't think it's cool, or the other way around, right? So that slowly develops over years and years and years, and that's your taste. Yeah. And I think following that, whether you call it taste or whether you call it like ideas or whatever it is that makes you is like trying to develop that and get good at following that and get good at like, oh, can I go there? Can I take this idea?
Right.
Whatever it is and develop it. And that's really hard. That's the hardest thing, I think, as an improviser, is like taking an idea and actually being able to stick with it, through the chord change or through the tune, especially on fiddle tunes are so hard because there's already such a strong outline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a constant challenge.
Do you feel like you're pretty risky when you perform?
It depends. Yeah, I think generally, yeah.
Okay. That's fun, though.
Yeah, but it also means you make mistakes.
It means you make mistakes, but I don't know. I like to tell people if you're not, it's kind of like the Miles Davis thing, right? Like if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not trying hard enough to play well.
I guess so, yeah.
That's how I think about it. I don't mind hearing
and I think,
mistakes.
you'll go through phases, like, I feel like I never hear people like Brian Sutton make mistakes, but he's clearly improvising all the time. So there's something, but then there's certain musicians who I love just as much who maybe do make some mistakes that are like that level professional. And that's just like them, I guess you develop into who you are. But I'm sure there has to be a certain level of consistency that is very high that like we're trying to find.
Yeah. It can't just be all clams.
Yeah.
Oh, how do people find information about you online?
Yeah, so with the band website is mile12bluegrass.com. We
and that's
update
spelled
it all the
out.
time.
It's
spelled
like
out.
TWELV. Like
Yeah, however you spell 12.
the 12, the word 12.
Yep.
It's not 1, 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. Yeah. And my website is Catherine Bowness. Okay. Catherine, BB. BB is short for Catherine.
Is it?
Not really, but I just like to confuse people.
Okay. And Catherine is with a C?
C, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Everyone followed all that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you Google like banjo, BB, New Zealand, maybe, I'm sure I'll come up somewhere.
Not all those other New Zealander banjo players.
Yeah, there's not too many, I guess.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much for sharing all this. It was really fun. Yeah. Okay. I'll see you around. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. This one featured BB Bowness of the band Mile 12. You heard 4 different sound clips in this episode, and in order they were I Saw the Light performed by the Hamilton County Bluegrass Band, and that was a television clip from the old New Zealand show called Country Touch. The next one was from BB's own YouTube clip. The title of her video, she calls it Tony Rice Solo on the Banjo, and it's basically her twinning Tony's guitar solo for her 9-pound hammer. The next 2 clips were both performed by Mile 12, BB's band. They were Barefoot in Jail, and then the instrumental track called Rialto. Thanks again to the Patreon supporters of today's show. That was Bradley Green and Anthony. Thank you guys so much. And for anyone else looking for the Patreon page, it's patreon.com/banjopodcast. You can always email me any comments or questions, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it for this episode. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Hey, now it's in tune. It's like just took the whole podcast to get it that way.